Hi everyone, welcome. The title of my talk today is Polymers for Future Electronics. This is a part of the educational workshop in Polymer Sciences 2020 plus. My name is Myung-Han Yoon from School of Material Science and Engineering at Gwangju Institute of Science and Technology, GIST, Gwangju, Republic of Korea. If you have any questions about my talk, so you can send me an email over here, mhyun@gist.ac.kr. Okay. So before we starting the polymers for future electronics, I'm going to first talk about the materials for current electronics and displays. As you can see in this picture, the MacBook, you can see it is notebook. So inside of this notebook, you can find the plastic circuit board and connected with the metallic lines, and there are passive and active electronic components, including the IC chips in there. Inside of these chips, you can find this integrated circuit, the pattern on the silicon. So material-wise, there are conductor, for example, made of the metals or metal oxide, and semiconductors, many made of the silicon, and insulator, these are the metal oxide or the polymers. As you can see, these the wires and this insulating the plastic just outside. And circuit boards is mainly made of the polymers. That's why we call the typically PCB or the plastic circuit board. And packaging material also needed to protect silicon into the circuit inside of here. These are the epoxy-based polymer packaging material, and this very complicated the silicon interior circuit patterned with polymer-based photoresist by using the conventional photolithography process. Then display materials consisting of the glass, the liquid crystal display, or the organ lighting emitting diode and the quantum dot LEDs these days, and cases made of the polymers, or nowadays also the very light metallic materials. These are the conventional or the current electronics and displays, and nowadays even cool displays and electronics are coming in the market. As you can see, this rollable TV and also the foldable the cell phone. So the contents of this talk for today is I'm going to first start with the part one, human-friendly electronics. You can see the skin or tattoo electronics, and also the wearable or the textile electronics and implantable electronics. And then I'm going to talk about the part two, green electronics. Then finally, I will close this talk with concluding remarks. So before we getting started with human-friendly electronics, we need to first know about the conducting polymers. So typical polymers or plastics, they are very light, flexible, and sometimes they are processable in solution. But most of these plastics or the polymers, they are electrically insulating. But this particular conducting polymers, I mean this type of the polymers, so they are electrically conductive. So that's why they can be useful or beneficial for skin, textile, stretchable electronics. People are studying and they expecting in the market very soon. So these conducting polymers, there are several the common features in there. So first, these are the the representative conducting polymers examples. So here the trans polyacetylene and polythiophene, polypyro, polyaniline, and polyphenylene, and polyparadiphenylene vinylene. So these structures, as you can see, there are the double bond or the pi conjugation in there. Also here there are aromatic rings are connected with each other. So compared with typical the polymers, which are essentially insulators, their conductivity are covering in the range of the semiconducting the silicon, and even close to the number of the electrical conductivity of the metallic materials, which is about the 10 to the third to the 10 to the fourth. So thanks to this good electrical conductivity, especially after doping, they have been used for many different device applications, and also they show mechanical flexibility and solution processability, which can be very interesting characteristic to go beyond the vacuum-based processing of the typical metallic and the metal oxide materials. So then why they are electrically conductive? So here is some the opposite example of the typical plastic or polyethylene. So starting from the ethylene monomer, if you polymerize them, so then this double bond is opened up, and then they are all connected with a single bond, which means the all electrons are basically occupied by the carbon and hydrogen by sharing electron or the covalent bond, or sigma bond in this case, or the carbon-carbon. So essentially all electrons are held by the chemical bond, and they cannot basically move around. But in the case of the trans polyacetylene, so starting from this acetylene monomer, they can form this conjugated or the double bond sitting next to each other like this way. So then they can have basically the conjugated pi system, because the p orbitals are located the normal direction of these backbone structures. So then the p orbital can form the pi bond, and if they are sitting next to each other, so then they eventually form the valence band using the pi bond and pi orbital, and conduction band using the pi star orbital. So essentially, this behave like these band structures behave like the highway structures. For electrical conductivity, we need more, because so not only the highway, but also we need carriers in that highway. So by introducing doping chemically or electrochemically, so we can have extra energy band, which are located between these two valence and the conduction band over here. So then this extra band allow basically the stepping stone to jump the charges from the valence band or the extra charge carriers in there, and then they can jump easily conduction band, compared to huge band gap between the valence band and conduction band without doping state. So basically we have the highway and also carriers. That's why we can have electrical conductivity. So here's a organic mixed ionic electronic conductors. Thanks to this pi conjugation and doping, it's been well known the conjugate polymers are very electrically conductive. But recently, people found the organic mixed ionic electronic conductors by recognizing ionic conductivity as well as the electronic conductivity in there. So for example, in case of PSS, which is one of the most well-known conducting polymer with its high electrical conductivity and also high environmental stability. So here it's been known for electrical conduction through the conjugated core or conjugated the backward structure. But recently, this PSS part can function as ion moved pathway. Same, likewise here, this structure, polythiophene unit is for the whole conduction, or electrical conduction basically. And then this ethylene glycol can function as ion movement, because the oxygen has the lone pairs and then lone pair electrons, and then these can help ion movement through these chains. So basically, that's why these materials are showing not only electronic but also the ionic conductivities in there. Thanks to these properties, so these special properties or these materials can function as the bioelectronic interfaces, because so first imagine without this type of the organic mixed conductors in between the electrolyte and electrode. So in that case, It's like you have the electrolyte solution and metallic electrode or the carbon electrodes. In that case, you only have the electrical double layer, that's it. But here, thanks to these organic mixed conductors, so which show the electronic and ionic transports, so then this electrochemical reaction with electrolyte can mediate this electrolyte movement and the conductivity to the electrode conductivity in here. So that's why they can be useful in interfacing ion-based bioelectrical signals. As you can see here in our body, there are several kinds of the bioelectricity phenomena going on. So for example, the heart beating and muscle contraction, relaxation, and the brain signal, nerve, neurons, and even the certain type of the endocrine system. There are the certain type of the cells which show the change of the membrane potentials. So these membrane potentials are the outcome of the ion concentration difference between the inside and outside of the cell, but particularly these tissues have the cells with the ion channels which can be gated with the voltage and or the metabolic signals. So that's why, for example, the neurons or the nerve, they can show typically they show the resting membrane potential. So then with some response to the outside signal, it can show the high plus the voltage and shooting up, and then it comes back. So this is called the action potential. So this type of the bioelectricity are mainly based on the ion concentration difference, and then this ion concentration difference depending on the outside signal. So the electrical or the electrophysiological responses can be predicted by the Nernst equation like this way. So the bottom line is, so in the organic, the mixed, the ionic and electronic conductors, they can the interface the ion-based bioelectrical signal and the solid state, the electronics. So you can see these materials can be utilized for the wearable and the implantable devices. For example, electrooculography for eye movements, and electroencephalography for the brain activity, and electromyography for your muscle, the movement, and also implantable devices like deep brain stimulators and vagus nerve stimulators and pacemakers and so on. So many different types of the bioelectronic devices have been developed for the biological signal recording, information processing, and stimulation, even before the organic or the polymer-based mixed ionic and electronic conductors. But nowadays, the polymeric materials, which show the good biocompatibility and good mechanical flexibility and good the conductivities, they can replace the conventional materials which have been used so far, for example, the metallic or the metal oxide materials. So for example, these are some examples showing the audience based on the conducting polymer or organic mixed ionic electronic conductor in the form of the fibers or the mesh, fiber mesh in the next slide. So for example, these are the PSS fibers, and then microfibers, they are stable in water, even though the raw material of the PSS is soluble in water. By the crystallization, they can form the highly crystalline and highly conductive materials, and they can be incorporated into the fabric. And even after several cycles of the washing, so the electrical resistance are not changed that much. Then after the sewing in the fabric, we can use these electronic materials to record EMG or the muscle activity depending on the load we had on the arm over here. Also, single fiber can be used for fabricating the ion sensing the electrochemical transistor. So in this case, we developed a single fiber transistor to measure the total ion concentration in Schumann sweat using phosphate, the bubble sunlight, and artificial sweat, and the human sweat. And also, these segments of the fibers can be combined by self-fusion to form the two-dimensional mesh electrode, and also three-dimensional structures by using the 3D printed template structure. Interestingly, when we increase the mass loading of the segment of the OMIEC fiber, so then the sheet resistance is decreasing with the increase in the mass loading, and in this case, the specific capacitance is increasing by increasing the mass loading of this fiber segment. Especially this specific capacitance is very important because unlike the metal and the carbon-based materials, which only show the electrical AA capacitance when they are interfacing with electrolyte solution, but in the case of these OMIEC materials, they are showing pseudo-capacitance by electrochemical activity. So these properties are well utilized for the acquiring high signal-to-noise ratio by electrical signal, and also the low voltage stimulation, especially for implantable electronics. And once they are combined together and they are even resistant or they are stable in water, while they can cover the curved surface and the complicated topography and also the biological tissue. This is why we can use these fiber mesh structures to conformally cover biological tissue when they are wet, and then we can use them as the hard signal recording electrode without using the glue, but still we can minimize the motion-based artifacts which they can happen in the case of using the solid-state electrode. So that's why you see how the signal is much more clean than in the case of using the platinum, the mesh as electrode. Okay, so now let me switch gear to the part 2, which is about the green electronics. You probably heard about this plastic pollution in the big ocean. So for example, in this picture, you can see so many different kinds of the plastic waste floating around in the ocean. So the experts they estimate the total area covered with this type of the plastic waste in Pacific Ocean are the equivalent to the almost 20 times of the South Korea area. So it's a huge area covered with this plastic waste. And also, you may have a chance to watch the video or the picture. In here, the turtle is suffering from this the plastic waste stuck on its nose, and also many of the seafood or the fish already have the pieces of the plastic, and also microplastics are already sitting inside of this fish. So many researchers are expecting that by the 2050, there will be more plastic than total number of the fish in the oceans in this planet. So this is very serious problem. We have to deal with that as soon as possible. So then, what kind of the materials are in this plastic waste everywhere? So here is the statistics. So obviously the packaging material is the number one, especially these packaging materials, the portion is getting higher and higher, especially under the condition of the COVID-19 outbreak. Then here the fabric and e-waste or the electronic waste. So what I mean by the e-waste, you can see this picture. So there are so many the plastic waste from the wasted electronics. So first of all, you see the very large number of the green color plastic, which are mainly plastic circuit board. So as we talked about in part in the introduction. So here there are different kind of materials, but typically the most seriously this circuit board or the PCB or plastic circuit boards are very important. But this is the one of the biggest source of the e-waste in there. And also there are also the plastic-based cases of the the electronics are out there. So many researchers have been studying what other kind of alternative materials can be available to replace current non-biodegradable PCB materials. So here, for example, polyvinyl alcohol, which is very simple structure and also biodegradable by the microorganism, have been studied quite a long time to replace PCB or the typical substrate for electronics, for the flexible electronics. And also here the silk fibrin. These are basically the protein-based materials. And then people are using and studying these materials for the implantable devices, because the silk fibrin can be eventually degraded by the enzyme activities and also the water solution. So in that case, PBA and silk, they are degradable by the microorganism, but the problem is they are not as stable in water. So which means the reliability of these electronics can be a serious problem. And also people studied the polylactic acid and polyethylene glycol as an alternative material for plastic circuit board. But the typical circuit board materials, they are highly resistant to thermal shock. So for example, the mobile devices, people use polyamide, which is known to be the engineering plastic with the high temperature resistance. So high because it has the high TG and TM. But the PLA and PEG, they cannot survive at the high temperature. This is why people want to develop and look for the alternative materials beyond these the 4 polymers I'm introducing over here, and also to make a transition to the commercial sector. So then the new alternative material is supposed to be very cost effective, but some of these materials are very expensive, or even though they can be affordable, but the mass production might not be suitable for the production of this material-based PCB structures. So that's why people are looking at nanocellulose, because they're starting from the wood after removing lignin. So then these cellulose fibers are well organized structures, thanks to so many hydroxyl functionality in there and hydrogen bonding, and they can easily form the crystalline structures. So after removing lignin and the certain type of the mechanical and the chemical treatment, we can get the cellulose nanofibers or the cellulose nanocrystals. So these are quite the promising materials for the alternative materials for the plastics in electronics, because these the originated materials are definitely they're degradable, and they don't make such kind of problem we saw with the petroleum-based non-degradable plastics. So what are the kind of the materials are available for nanocellulose? Because here the tree or the wood products based cellulose, they can be available in many places, but the whole process is very complicated, because we have to first remove the lignin, and also since during this process we are losing good properties of the cellulose. So that's why people also study bacterial cellulose, where the cellulose composition is higher than 90%, and their crystallinity is even higher than the cellulose originated from the wood products. And also there are lots of the naturally wasted materials which are basically cheap or you can have actually the negative cost. So for example, rice straw and the sea pineapple, these are anyhow the waste materials and properly treated. Otherwise, they are making the bad smells and the large of the environmental problems too. So that's why we need to study more how to process the wasted materials, especially to extract useful nanocellulose out of there. And this including the bacterial cellulose and rice straw and the sea pineapple, the crust. So the composition of the cellulose is much higher than in wooden products. So they are quite the quality of the nanocellulose is much better than those from wooden product, and also the raw material itself much cheaper than wooden product. And also there are other types of the natural waste materials from ocean. For example, the crab. So you know here they are made of the chitin or chitosan, and they're showing the good mechanical properties. And also due to the increase in the temperature of the ocean, there are huge problems of the seaweed close to the beach or close to the land. So we have to deal with this natural waste anyhow, and also depending on the country, there are so much piles of the clamshells or the shellfish. So we have to deal with these materials too. And these clamshells are mainly made of the calcium carbonate. If we can find a way to combine these biodegradable, the natural carbohydrate materials and the calcium carbonate, then definitely we can find the good materials and the composite materials based on this the product. Okay, before they close this talk, I would like to give some concluding remarks. So here is the list of the rankings of the industrial raw materials. Starting from crude oil, is these most demanded materials, as you can imagine. Number 2 is natural gas. Number 3 is cement. Number 4 is coal. So top 1 to 4 are fossil fuels. So we need them for energy and transportation and so on. We'll talk about it in a minute. And also number 3, number 6, number 7, to process them, you need energy, and this energy are mainly coming from the fossil fuels. So in that sense, is no wonder because here these fossil fuels are mainly used for transportation and the heating and the electrical energy generation. So almost the 90% of these fossil fuels go to the transportation and heating and the energy. So in that sense, it's kind of the imaginable to see the climate change and pollution, because we are the burning or so much the fossil fuels to have the transportation energy and also the heating and electrical generation. So this is mainly due to the fossil fuel dependence. That's why we have so much problems with this kind of the things. And also, we also rely on soft materials with the lightweight and the manufacturability and flexible materials. So for the petroleum-based plastic, you can see this starting from the number 1 product in terms of the mass here, polypropylene and polyethylene, and all different kinds of polymers are produced. And problem is they are not non-biodegradable, and they are floating around all over the sea. So very recently, people start to look at the renewable energy, because if we keep relying on the fossil fuel-based energy, so then we have the carbon dioxide problem, and also these energy sources will be exhausted anyway. So that's why many researchers are studying on renewable energy sources, including the solar energy, wind energy, and so on. And also they convert this energy or they store this energy by relying on the hydrogen system, because the water to hydrogen oxygen and hydrogen combustion with oxygen, then going back to water. So then we can see the trend is changing, not only in the renewable energy, but also renewable materials. So the same kind of trend has been followed here. For example, product of the life cycle, here the paper, starting from the wood and pulp and the paper, and then some of them buried, but they are degraded by the microorganism, and some of them are recycled, and then they are going like this way. And also steel products, especially for the car makers, so they can crush them and recycle them, they can reuse them. So there are the cycle, life cycle of these materials. But what about the plastic? So far the petroleum-based plastic, the recyclability is still very low. So that's why we have to find a way to how we can recycle these materials. And also we need to develop a new type of material which can be degraded in the natural state. So for example, using the cellulose-based materials. So that's the way we can save this planet, and that's the way we can pass down our beautiful planet to our next generation. Okay, thanks for your attention.